Yo, what's going on, everybody? We're back in the saddle. It is Dana White Contender Series, week number 6. And I must say, we're not coming at you with a weak offering this week, guys. We have an excellent week of Contender Series on the slate this week. So I'm excited to break it down. And you know who's with me. It's none other than Gordo Gambles, back again, 4 years running. What is it now, Gordo? And we're looking to make it another successful season. So how are you, my man?
Yeah, we're looking to keep it rolling, man. This has been a very interesting week. Let's start over, my friend. This has been a very interesting year of Contender Series, to say the least. We've had a lot of interesting matchups. And I was just talking to you about it backstage. We had 2 weeks ago where we had these big favorites, these squash matches, these first-round knockouts. We had last week where we had maybe not the best level of competition. And now I do think we have ourselves a very, very good week where they're going to be competitive fights. These are fighters that I do think could get wins at the UFC level. We get a Canadian fighter for me to cheer for. It does check all the boxes out here, and I am looking forward to talk some fights as always. So we're at the halfway mark, my friend. We're past it. And, we always enjoy it when it's the moment. Let's savor these last few weeks. And this is truly a fight card that I do think will deliver on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, man. And I must say, a couple of these last weeks at Contender, I'm like, I can't really get fired up about some of these guys, or I have some really big questions about these guys. But I feel like at least for some of these matchups, I was able to dig a little bit in and find some, notes that I think are interesting. So hopefully we can find some common ground or even have some interesting disagreements as well for the people. But with that being said, my brother, none other than a Canadian is going to be starting us off in the first fight of the night. We got Cody. You can give the pronunciation better than I'm sure. And he's taking on a fellow from the UK across the pond. My brother, we'll kick this one over to you first. How do you feel about this matchup? I can't wait to break it down.
Dude, I am very, very excited to go out here. Not only see a Canadian, but an undefeated one at that. Cody Chovancek is how I've been calling it this week. Let's just call him Cody, but a guy who was going out there training at a very, very good gym there in Canada, Niagara top team. Shout out Petrolia, Canada there as well, Ontario, where he's training out of a little bit in the middle of nowhere, but looks like he's making the commute out to Niagara top team. But a guy who's been out there, he's paid his dues in the regional scene, someone who has looked to go out there and show a really well-rounded assets. Like, he's gone out there, he can mix in takedowns very well. He can also strike at distance. He has shown the 5-round cardio, which is an ability to go out there late as well. And he is someone who I do think has the ability to check off skills in all boxes. You look out there and he's somebody I want to cheer for. He's entertaining. He is tough. He's looking to get the crowd fired up. And he's someone who I do think has attributes in all areas that I do think could translate well. I also don't think he has too bad of a submission arsenal on the ground, but he does typically use those takedowns to seal rounds. And that minute winning, that moment winning, that ability to seal those rounds, to win their scorecards, I do think is important when you're fighting with his style. And that style is a little bit of patience, a little bit of inactivity at sometimes. But when he does go, I like the leg kicks, I like the activity, and someone who I do think could be well versed in all areas. Now, do I have my concerns about him? I do think that the inactivity, the lack of ability to press forward at sometimes, and the fact that he doesn't really have any specialties in any area, in my opinion, definitely may hold him back here when it comes to a overall ceiling of the fighter. I do think he is a Canadian prospect who is definitely don't really have too many flaws, who is durable, who will fight a good, entertaining fight for a very, let's say, 15-minute, 25-minute fight if he's even needed to, that I do think will go out there and be very, very fun. Rafael on the other side of things, Uchegbu, I do think is someone who maybe has a little bit of a higher ceiling. I don't think he's as consistent. I think the biggest issue for Uchegbu is actually probably the biggest strength of Chovancek is probably that fight IQ. Like, I do think that Uchegbu does make mistakes inside the cage, but he's someone who has some decent offerings. On the feet, I do think he has solid range. I do think he probably has the cleaner strikes when it comes to overall technique with it all, but still someone who is more erratic with that all. He can be overzealous. He can put himself in different situations there as well, looking to be more emphatic to in the moments. On the ground, although he can shoot takedowns himself, we have also seen him stall in the bottom position, but it's also because he probably has the better overall jiu-jitsu arsenal, and I do think he is someone who is pretty dangerous at that. I do think this fight as a whole is a very, very close one. When it comes to probably the betting line and what I'm looking to target, I think this is a 15-minute war. I'll be completely honest with you. I think this one goes all 15. I think it's one that between two guys who have been pretty durable, who is going to throw a lot of things at you. The only thing holding me back from picking Chovancek at a really high clip here is just the levels of inactivity. Don't get me wrong. I'll be cheering for the Canadian. I hope he wins. I have really, really struggled to go out there and pick him with too much confidence. Maybe I'm just trying not to make sure I'm too biased to the Canadian going out here, but I do think there's going to be spots where this is a 15-minute war. I think Uchegbu can go out there and win moments with position on the ground. I think he's probably the more likely submission grappler of the two. And I do think on the feet, Uchegbu, I think, is someone who just rates out to deal more, land more volume, land more strikes, land more things from the outside that I do think could go ahead and hurt Chovancek. So if you give Cody the opportunity to go out there and, fight at his pace, mix in takedowns, let Cody take the front foot, I do think it's going to make for a very interesting matchup. And in a fight that's supposed to go 15 minutes, I'm going to slightly side, gun to my head, with the guy from the UK here. Don't get me wrong, I'm cheering for the Canadian. I do think he wins. I just still think he has a little bit of, let's say, proving it to me. He has to do a bit more. But this seems like a fight where maybe I'll look to bet the over and sit back and enjoy in what should be a very, very good fight here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about this matchup. I think it's an interesting fight. But I have to say, when I went back and watched Uchegbu, obviously he's gotten a little bit better since that fight that he had on PFL. You see him getting a little bit more decisive with his striking. But the thing that I didn't like about that fight is like a lot of the grappling sequences just didn't look very great to me, right? Especially not at the UFC level, right? It's not to say like he doesn't have skills, right? He's getting better all the time, but it's like it just seemed to me like there was a lot of fundamental mistakes in that fight, like letting a guy sweep up from bottom, at times, like just some things where it was like, ooh, that's ugly, right? Like engaging in the grappling when he didn't need to. When you're the guy that's got the advantage on the feet or the perceived advantage on the feet, and you find yourself constantly grappling, that's a problem for me, right? It's like, why are you doing that? Get out of those positions. It's holding you back. And I feel like that's kind of what I saw a little bit from him in that fight where he lost. And when I look at, Cody on the other side, I think that the thing that stood out to me, and again, it's not going to be a perfect style that works every time because I do think he's a little bit hittable, but I think he's like an anti-rhythm fighter. And what I mean by that is like his game is about interrupting you and not letting you get into a rhythm. So he likes to throw big punches. He likes to try and land his shots with some conviction upstairs. But he's also this guy that if you start pressuring him, if you start trying to land shots, he's going to shoot a takedown. And for a lot of guys, it's a problem if they shoot takedowns, but they can't control people. Like you'll see a lot of times, like that's the undoing of a lot of guys, right? They take somebody down, but then they lose a lot of energy on the exchange and they still can't control the guy. And now it's like, wow, I wasted that energy. I think he's got excellent cardio. I think he pushes a really good pace. You see that 5-round fight, he gets the finish in the 5th round and he's pushing the whole fight. Like he's using a lot of energy at all times and he had it. He was able to keep pushing that pace. So for me, it's a 15-minute fight. I think he's going to be fully confident he can go out there and really apply a heavy pace. And I don't think he's like, the best wrestler I've ever seen. But I think he does know when to shoot takedowns. And like you see a guy start to land. I used to talk about Derek Brunson as like a guy that I loved his style because when you were striking, he's wrestling. And then when you're wrestling, he's punching you in the face. And that's just a really good way to win fights. And I think that Cody, that's kind of what he understands is like he goes out there and he tries to take him to the ground, land a couple ground and pound shots to make it count. And then if they get up, no problem because he's happy to do it again. But he's also happy to go back to the striking. He's not afraid to fight anywhere. And so I think that the danger for him in this fight is like a errant head kick. I think he could get, clipped on the head and that might mess him up. But when I look at it, I do think that he has a path to going out here and keeping a guy. You talked about how like this guy's a little bit inconsistent. One thing that guys like this love to be in is a beautiful rhythm. Touch, do the, and it's like, I just think that this guy is going to be really insistent about interrupting that rhythm. And for me, that's a path to victory here for the underdog. He's the younger fighter as well. But I will go back to the UFC stats page, guys, because it does note there's a big reach advantage here for Uchegbu. So that's something that you got to note, right? I think if this fight takes place primarily at distance, 15 minutes of kickboxing, I think unless Cody hurts him, it's going to be a really long night for him, right? But I think that if he's able to mix in those takedowns, interrupt the rhythm, even if he's not able to hold him down, right? What I saw was that guy was able to get multiple takedowns on him in the PFL when he got taken down. It wasn't one takedown. It was multiple takedowns. It was multiple negative grappling exchanges. And it's like, you put somebody in enough negative grappling exchanges, they quit. And that's what happened to Gage. It's like he was in a lot of really negative grappling situations. He tried to fight back. I think it was in round 3, came out swinging, came out trying to assert himself, and then a takedown and all the air is, sucked out of the room again. It's like, that's what it's like to fight a guy like this when they're willing to keep doing it, when they're willing to keep shooting takedowns. And so I'm not saying he's Merab Dvalishvili, right? Like he doesn't have that, but it's like, how does he win fights? He goes out there and he tries to weaponize the pace. And I think in his last fight, he missed weight and he kind of looked like shit physically. He probably wasn't feeling his best that night, found a way to get the win. I feel like right now he's in very good shape and ready to push 15 minutes of, insistent bullying pressure on this guy. And I think if he does that, he could win the fight. So for me, live underdog here. And I'm going to do a little bit more tape, a little more due diligence before I say, like, this is a spot that I would invest in. In New York, we have very limited options. I have to see what the price is on Novig. But when I just looked at this fight, I felt like he was probably going to be a dog, and I just feel like he's got dog in him, right? When I talk about, I told you before the show, I don't come on here every week and say, like, man, this Canadian guy has a ton of aura, and that's no disrespect. It's just like some fighters have it and some guys don't, right? Like Joe Anderson, Brito, and these guys that barking at people. These are things that are aura creating, right? This guy, Cody, in between rounds is yelling. He's pumping up the crowd, like at the Apex. I feel like this guy is going to be right at home, just going out there and making a scene and talking to the camera and talking to this guy and, letting him know. So if he's able to get his game going, I feel like, he could have a really good impression on Dana as well, because he's not a guy that goes out there to lay and pray. Like, that's not his style. He goes out there to try and finish people and to try and beat them up, so I think that for him is going to be an advantage if it comes to contract time. But dude, I'm fascinated by this fight.
Me too, and I hope you're right. And don't get me wrong, I'm cheering for the Canadian. I'll definitely be really rooting for him to get it done here. When it comes down to those, I know I'm biased. I know I'm going to be cheering for them, so I'm trying to make sure I cap this with fresh pair of eyes. I'm not really letting myself be deceived. And what it comes down to is I think it's a really close fight. If you could have got that plus 150, plus 160 line of Chovancek that was out there earlier, I do think that's a good bet on Cody. But I do think that when it comes down to a gun to the head winner, I would go out there and probably pick the fighter from the UK, which is just hurts me to say. But I do think the line is getting to correct itself. Money's coming in on Cody, and I tend to agree with that. Should be a very, very closely contested fight over 15 minutes, in my opinion. And I'm definitely cheering for Cody, but I'll just be brutally honest with you guys every time I'm on the show.
Of course, brother, and we appreciate that about you. No biases here, and I will just share this from OddsJam. At least in I think this is the New York or New Jersey market. I forget which I have it toggled to right now, and I'm ultra zoomed, obviously. But when you look at this fight, we're looking at a juiced over, right? So they're expecting this fight to go the distance, and for me, that is I prefer that for Cody in terms of like how I see him winning this fight, right? I think Uchegbu is 9-0 in fights that end inside the distance and 1-1 in fights that go to decision. And when I look at Cody, like, I feel like he might have a hard time finishing this guy because his game takes 5 rounds to unfold, really. But it's like, this is the kind of guy that I think if he can get, 3 or 4 takedowns, he could win the fight. And he could do it over the course of 15 minutes. So these are the numbers that we're working with on this first fight of the night. But we can kick it, guys, to the second fight of the night. And now we go from Gordo's homeland to my own, right? Obviously, my ancestral homeland. I'm in an Irish-American original. And when you look at Paddy McCorry on the other side, he's going to be repping the tricolor. And he's taking on Hwang in this fight. I'll take on this fight first. We got the legendary Hwang. Great nickname, right? The tape left a little bit to be desired with that nickname, right? But that's a lofty set of expectations to create for yourself. And then on the other side for Paddy McCorry, this is a guy that we saw on The Ultimate Fighter. He got a win there. Brilliant guillotine choke. I'm a front choke merchant myself. I really enjoyed his process there, his system. He was very patient as well. He got taken down. He was in some negative positions, gave up his back, but he never gave up 2 hooks. He never gave up everything. He kind of kept himself just safe enough, 2 hands on, made sure that he stayed safe. And then as soon as he had an opportunity, closed the show. I really like to see that from him. And then when you look at, his striking game, obviously it was disappointing he didn't get the finish in his last fight. But when you look at, he's just constantly knocking the guy down. He's constantly keeping him off balance. He's doing a lot right with the striking. He didn't overthrow a lot. He kind of just kept within himself. And I feel like he's a guy that's shown he can finish fights. He can be dangerous. Even in the Robert Valentin fight, what was his biggest mistake? He hurt the guy bad and then sprinted in and kind of gave up his reach, right? Gave up the length, gave up all this ability he has to fight from distance. And instead he crashed the pocket. The guy hit him with a Greco-Roman throw and then almost instantly put him in a position where, he's going to snap his arm in half. And that's a tough spot to be, right? You don't want to be underneath a big man, when they have, your arms isolated. So it was just a horrible position to end up in. And it's like, why did I do that? He's probably looking at himself like, man, if I just keep my distance, manage my shots, don't overexert, I could beat these guys. And, he might knock somebody out by accident. He's that kind of guy. you look at Insu Wang, his only loss, what did he do? Knocked himself out. He just sprinted onto a punch. It was kind of hilarious, right? But I do think he's tempered himself a little bit. But when I watch the tape, my man, zero head movement. Stepping forward, head straight on a line, hands like this. It's like he kind of does this thing where he'll kind of pull back. He'll do a little pull back. He'll kind of step a little bit. But my man, he is not showing a lot of very impressive head movement on the tape. So the thing that I really am concerned about as well is even in some of these fights he's winning, he's getting taken down very easily. And that's the kind of thing where it's like he doesn't really show a submission game. Maybe he's got, some great jiu-jitsu in his back pocket or something. People are talking, he trains with the zombie. But I'd kind of have to see it to believe it, right? What I have seen is that his grappling did not look very good to me. And then on the other side, Paddy, I think, has pretty serviceable offensive grappling. I think his takedowns are pretty good. So I think he probably has a path to getting this guy out of there. When I look at these two guys, we'll compare on UFC stats as well what we have in terms of height and reach for this matchup. But I just look at these two guys and, it's pretty similar in terms of the reach, right? Slight advantage for Legendary, but we're looking at, a 4-inch deficit in the height department. I think some uppercuts are in play for Paddy. I think some elbows over the top. I think his kicks are going to be, open as well in this matchup. So, the one thing I don't love is that it is a small, cage, and Paddy does like to use his footwork and move around. He could end up getting cornered into the fence and hit with a big shot. That would be my biggest concern for him here. But, I just think he's the better fighter between these two guys. So ultimately, Paddy McCorry is my pick. Biased as shit. I'll let you guys know that. But I just don't think I saw enough from Insu Wang to pick him in this spot. I do think he's gotten better over time, but I still think there's some room for improvement. What do you think, Gordo?
Do you have access to the weigh-in photos, the face-offs? Is that something you got pulled up here close?
I tried to go through MMA Junkie, and they definitely were, pissed about my ad blocker, and I did not know how to turn that off midstream, but I will find another source. I'll go to YouTube real quick. I'll pull that up.
I just sent you some photos on Twitter. Maybe
You're the GOAT.
Do that. But no, I do think this was definitely very interesting. When I look at this fight as a whole, when I go out there, I stalk the social media of someone like Insu Hwang, and I see, okay, decent amount of followers, sick tattoos, training with the zombie. He's got some rounds in at Extreme Couture, pictures with Strickland, all that kind of stuff. And say, okay, 8-1 record, lots of early finishes, could look okay. The tape didn't really deliver. I think what it came down to, putting it really quickly, was he looked to be a fantastic hammer, right? When he's going out there, he's landing the big shots. He's got solid kick, solid right hand. He can put people out. He's definitely someone who I do think has some violence. But he's also someone who I do think didn't like to be hit too often, ran into an elbow and got knocked out early. Definitely had his issues there. And someone who I haven't really seen test against the best level of competition. Can be taken down, can have these issues. And I do think it leaves some room to be desired, to say the least, for someone like Hwang. Look at someone like Paddy McCorry, a big dude, right? You see that here. I actually ended up watching that season of The Ultimate Fighter. I didn't watch the last one. I did see that one. Likeable dude, right? Happy to see him there. Had a nice, gritty, will come from behind victory. Oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. Mark Hume there in that matchup where he pulled out that guillotine. Someone who I do think has a big frame, good personality, as we saw there in the comments. Got a great celebration after when he's smoking on that pack. He's going out there and he's looking pretty good. He got that nice Peaky Blinders hat going on too. Like the guy's a character. He's a fun guy to watch. But you see how green the guy is, right? And my first image of him was someone that I saw back in the Ultimate Fighter, and it's like, okay, still someone who I do think lacks some defense. I've seen him take it out of his own right, but I've seen that resiliency, right? I've seen him push through. Great guillotine to defend off things out there as well. And when he's on the front foot, he wants to get into war. He wants to go out there and swing. He is an aggressive fighter. I do think he's someone who is willing to get hit to give one back. I think he's a fighter. Look at someone like Hwang, he's more so like he's taking care of these fighters. He should. He's a better hammer than he's a nail, right? And he wants to keep this a technical battle from range. He doesn't really want to go in there and exchange. And unfortunately, you don't get that option when you're facing Paddy McCorry, someone who I do think is going to be the aggressor of the two here. So when it comes down to the striking exchanges, I favor the size of McCorry. I think he is going to be the aggressor. I think he'll land more volume. And as long as he avoids that right hand and the low kick, he's got the weapons covered. Additionally, when it comes down to the styles on the mat as well, although I think both have their flaws on the ground, I favor the size and wrestling of McCorry if he was out there to go out there and utilize it, right? So I think it's McCorry's fight to lose. The line is kind of, flying up there, minus 250, minus 260 kind of thing. People are catching on. I think it's the fight that ends violently, one way or the other. The under 1.5 is currently sitting at plus money. I think this is a violent one early. I think Paddy McCorry goes out there, looks to put on a show. If Hwang lands that big shot, so be it. I do think he's got good killer instinct. Aside from that, takedowns lead me to be concerned. I do also think he is not always the best reactionary to being hit, and I do think size will be a factor here. So give me Paddy, give me the under, and I do think it should be a fun, violent affair, albeit not the same high levelness as the last one.
Yeah, the thing I will end with is I see, we got a very sharp assemblage in the chat. Shout out to Artem MMA, shout out to Jewish Better, shout out to Glenbot, and like he said, the whole original crew. Appreciate all you guys, Dixon as well. Shout out to all you guys. I appreciate you guys for being here. And Glenbot in the chat asked, is Paddy sub live? In my humble opinion, absolutely. Number one, I think he's a better grappler based on what I've seen on tape. Number two, I think he's a more aggressive grappler based on what I've seen on tape. And number three, I think that, I just would not be surprised if he went out there and tried to grapple with this guy a little bit. I would at least go out there and find out if I was him. Like if this guy can defend takedowns, because if he can't, he might just be able to go out there and kind of bum rush him, barrel him over, take his back and finish him in like 30 seconds. So I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying like, I haven't seen enough from Min-Soo Wang to believe like, man, this guy's ground game is great. I saw him almost get passed by some guys that were like, just okay, and I saw him not putting away guys. And also the one thing I wanted to note from the UFC stats page, Paddy McCorry listed as a switch stance fighter. I think if he's done his homework here, he's going to have some big opportunities from the southpaw stance. So I think, that should definitely be a component of his game playing here. Hwang isn't going to respect Paddy's power. The path to victory against Hwang is grappling. Will Curry was set up as the A side. Going to be easy work. Interesting. I faded Will Curry in the past, and I told people that I thought, he had suspect cardio. I still believe that, but I have to see. Paddy Darce maybe. Yeah, I could see that. I think there's a bunch of people with good Darce chokes, good front chokes on this card, and we'll talk about some of them coming up here. But any closing comments, Gordo?
No, I do think that could be viable. I just think at its core, though, Paddy McCorry's a brawler and someone who's looking to go out there put on an entertaining fight. The last thing I'll mention, too, is I alluded to the large social media following, someone like Hwang. Corey's got a lot more followers than I expected him to be completely honest. Someone who's also, pretty well liked. We got that aura about him as well as you talked about the celebration. So I think this is a spot where McCorry's set up for success. And like I said, you survive that power shot early, and I do think you have a very beatable opponent in front of you.
I absolutely love it. Dude, I think that when I'm looking at these lines as well, like I kind of lean towards the under, but I don't know. I suppose I'd have to see what the prop prices are before I decide what my favorite angle is here. But to your point, if Paddy's going to go out there and exchange, like how did he lose before? He got taken down and then he got his arm put in a bad situation. So maybe Min-Soo Wang is like secret black belt, reporting for duty. Like, again, I haven't seen it on the tape, but we've seen guys come out before with, kind of skills that they keep in their back pocket. So it's an interesting thing to know. But on to the next one, guys. Talk about American wrestling, baby. I've been watching Tommy Gantt for a long time, and he finally made the transition over, right? He's taking on Adam Livingston, so I got biases in both directions, right? What's a man supposed to do? You got Tommy Gantt on the one side, excellent wrestler, guy I really respect. He's a wrestling coach as well, so nothing but love for Tommy Gantt. And by the way, they're doing really special things in that program in North Carolina, so you got to give a lot of credit and respect to the coaching staff. Vince Robinson said, Tommy Gantt changed my life. And he's a national champion now. So you look at what Tommy Gantt can do for, athletes. He's a special guy, but he's 32 years of age. He's coming over to the sport. So it's going to be difficult. And then on the other side, man, we got a New Yorker, Adam Livingston, and a guy who looks like he's going to one day be in the UFC. I'll say it that way. So, man, for me, I'm excited about this fight. I'm going to kick it to you first, Gordo. First, we'll get the unbiased opinion, and then I'll give both my biased as shit opinions.
Hey, I've already had mine with the Canadian out of the way, so let's go at it here. No, I do think this is a fun fight. I think when it comes down to picking another winner, just like the very first fight of the night, this is another one where you have, two guys who I think could be UFC level caliber fighters, who I do think could go out there and put on an extended affair that could look to not only entertain, but deliver here. And I think that it's not one where there's going to be a clear smash slot early. We're going to see whose style really takes over. And when it comes down to it, we could kind of classify it as a striker versus brawler match, striker versus grappler matchup. That's kind of because of the Tommy Gantt side of things. He does have that wrestling pedigree. He was on the team trials for America. What a great country that I'm in right now, right? We just talked about Canada earlier. There we go. But you have someone like Gantt who does have that wrestling pedigree. He does show that in his fights. He's going out there. He has been insanely active. Only going pro a couple of years ago, already is 10-0, fighting bumps, if we're being honest. But he's getting takedowns. He is passing position early, and he is being aggressive. He's looking to get that finish. He is looking like he is just double parked out front. He wants to go out there and get it in and out, right? He's doing that with his fights once a month. He's doing that with his takedowns and ground control. He is someone who does look to be very, very aggressive. And when I see that mixed in with the cardio, with the relentless takedowns, this is a guy I like. I'm a primary DraftKings player when it comes to UFC. Someone with this cardio, takedown game plan, and ability to land damage from top position is gold. And I thought this is a spot where I would be really all over the wrestler. But you look at someone like Livingston, he is showing things you want to see. He is showing the ability to go out there and sprawl. He is showing some good athleticism. And this dude's just kind of just like a really good athlete. He's landing shots from different areas. I do think he's pretty aggressive on the feet. And I do think he has really good in close clinch shots, right? I think from range, he's someone who I do think is beatable against other fighters, but he is going out there. He is throwing with bad intention. He's landing inside the pocket there as well. And he is staying busy at all time, right? Where Gantt is staying busy with the takedowns, Livingston's always throwing something out there. He's landing shots from awkward angles. He's hitting these big shots. And again, not the most technically diverse, but they're powerful. And I do think that could change the optics of the fight here. So to me, it's a pretty simple one where, Tommy Gant's going to have to close the distance to have success here. He's going to need to land his takedowns, going to have success. And if he gets it on the legs across the cage, I think he'll be able to rinse repeat takedowns. That's his style. His cardio seems to reign supreme. But something's telling me, Liam, that every time he enters the pocket, he's taking a risk. Like, I don't see Gantt as being the best control guy, and Livingston seems to work his way up to the feet really well. He's going to have to exchange in the pocket a few times, and Livingston's power's been pretty good. Now, Gantt has fought a low-level competition. I have seen him dropped. Weird situation in that fight. He bounced right back up. That's fine. Up a weight class, all those different question marks. But something's telling me that the power of Livingston could be a definite issue here, especially if they are going to be close inside the clinch. So to me, grappler versus striker matchup, I do think that I know I sided with the Gantt side of things due to cardio, due to pace, due to pressure, and the fact that I am typically a wrestler first type of guy when it comes to game plans. But I'm going to be taking a look at this KO prop for Livingston because I do think that's probably his major path to victory. I do think I favor the cardio, minute winning, and that path for someone like Gantt. So Livingston's going to need to win those moments. He's got the size, he's got the power, and we really haven't seen Gantt tested all too much. So very, very intriguing matchup. I slightly lean towards the Gantt side of things. I get the money coming back in Livingston, and we'll see where that KO prop opens up.
Yeah, man, this is a really fascinating fight. I think both these guys are, certainly worthy of this opportunity, right? Tommy Gantt is basically trying to fast track, an MMA career because he got to the game a little bit late. But we have seen other guys like a Daniel Cormier come in and have success at this age. It's not like it's unheard of, but it does take a special athlete. It does take a special level of commitment. Not a lot of guys have 15 fights in, a year or a year and a half, whatever it's been. It's like this guy has really dedicated himself to this while he's also coaching. So very impressive dude. And on the other side for Livingston, you can just tell that this guy's a natural fighter. This guy's really about this life. He really wants to go out there and scrap. And that's the one real concern that I have is Tommy is obviously going to have, excellent skills, right? Like he can go out there and beat up a lot of guys on the fact that he has excellent skills. And now he might be in the first real dog fight of his life in a MMA setting. And so that's the real critical question for him here, right? It's how does he respond if it becomes that kind of fight? But I will say, when I saw Livingston, getting taken down pretty frequently on the tape, that's a real concern for me, right? Yes, he's able to work back up to his feet, but I think that Gantt, unlike a lot of these guys, has something real to offer on top. He does some things that are really subtle that really make a huge difference. I can list off a few examples, but the wrist control, I think is big. The fact that he goes to that crossface ride and kind of as people are trying to stand up, pulls that arm in and starts throwing knees to the body, starts throwing uppercuts. Like, a lot of guys are good at just covering up their head over the top. And so a lot of punches or like, little hammer fists or wasted energy that kind of just slap their hands and don't really do much damage. Whereas you can get really big shots that come underneath, and I feel like he is a really aggressive guy with his ground and pound in ways that a lot of wrestlers are not. He's like getting his body into like a near cross body position to elbow the side of somebody's head as hard as he can. And he's a violent dude, So in that way, I think that, this could be a really dominant fight kind of for either guy. Like, I think you're right that Livingston could win the fight by knockout. But I also think that if Tommy Gantt is able to get these takedowns early and often and pass and like get this guy in bad positions, like, I just haven't seen somebody like Gantt against Livingston. Like, if I go back and I'm going to quickly look at Livingston's record, right? He's fought some tough dudes, but like this Hugo Oyarzun, man, I watched that fight and that dude looked pretty slow to me. Like, obviously on the feet there was a huge advantage, but he was getting some takedowns, and I just feel like that's a red flag for me. I think Tommy Gantt would wrestle that guy into oblivion, honestly. Like, maybe Tommy Gantt would get knocked out by that guy. He hasn't really fought that level of competition. But I think Jake Hixenbaugh got a takedown before he got brutally knocked out of that fight. And, Lerone Murphy, right? You could list off examples of guys who have gotten back up from takedowns, but he's a guy that's had a lot of experience at a high level as well. This is the biggest fight of his life. He's 24. He's a young man. I think he's definitely coming to the UFC. But for Tommy Gantt, this is like a win now situation. He needs this, like he needs this win right now. And I feel like, he could go out there and maybe wrestle his way to a decision here. And I also think that if he's able to get to those top positions early and often, I have seen at times, this guy taking some damage. And if you take that damage underneath a guy like this, Livingston's a really tough dude, right? But again, when you're just underneath somebody and you can't get away and you start to bleed and you got those cuts by your eyes, that's the kind of thing that I've seen happen to him a few times before, but it hasn't mattered because he's been on the feet. And I think that in this matchup, it could be a little bit different. So both these guys are around the same size. I think that Tommy Gantt needs takedowns to win this fight. I think if he doesn't get them, he will lose. The last thing I'll mention here about Gantt striking that I don't like is that when he gets backed up and he gets pressured, at times he kind of just keeps his hand, very far away from his face and is like trying to probe and find where the guy is. And I do think that could get him head kicked or that could get him hit with a pretty big punch. So for me, that's a few of the defensive liabilities that I saw for the Gantt side. And also the other thing is he could just poke somebody in the eye because he does have his hands open and like kind of just pushing away at the face. And, I don't think point deductions are a huge part of the Contender series, right? Most of these fights end violently, but I do think that, that's going to be a problem long-term if he does not fix that. Maybe he's from the DC school of, eye poke. So let's look at the odds here real quick to see if anything stands out. We got Livingston plus 124 as the underdog. Tommy Gantt minus 134. Pinnacle, best available price. Very interesting. And we've got the under 2.5 rounds sitting at minus 135. Anything jump off the page to you, Gordo?
No, I do think it's a pretty close contested fight. Let me just make sure I'm not speaking out of turn when I pull this up here. But, yeah, Gantt opened minus 120, immediately bet down to the underdog. So at one point he was plus 125, and then the steady amount of money came in, made him all the way down to minus 177. So a little bit of a buyback. The market's kind of settling. I think it's about right. When it comes to over-unders, I'm not as passionate in this one. I have been for other ones in terms of over-unders here. I do think if I had to pick anything, I lean the under because, like I said, I'll be looking at that Livingston KO prop, and Gantz can weaponize that cardio and is always looking to punish people from top position. But I could see this one getting extended. Livingston does seem to be pretty tough. So definitely a lot of questions to be answered. I lean the under. I lean Gantt, but I'll be looking at that Livingston KO prop when it comes out.
Fair play, my man. And yeah, I would tend to agree. Like, I don't feel as drawn to these prices. This will probably be, one where I'd be looking at props or probably leaving this alone unless something changes in the market, right? If one line gets steamed one direction or the other, maybe that changes my mind. But, it just feels like these prices are about accurate. All right, man. On to the next one. We got Iwo Baraniewski. I tried against Muhammad Ali. That's an easier one. Man, I think did I lead off the last one or did you, Gordo?
I think I did.
Okay, I'm happy to take this one then. I again feel like both these guys could fight in the UFC, but you've got one guy who's 31 and kind of needs to go right now. And then, oh my goodness, you have to be kidding me. We have a treat for you folks. Talk about the OG crew. None other than Big Bird himself. I threw the link in the Twitter DMs just on a whim. I was like, you know what? Let's see if this man's available. And none other than the Big Bird. How are you, my brother? It's so good to see you.
You sent the bat signal, and Danilo Vojdadkin from last year. I had good memories of us chatting it up about all these excellent prospects, and what better week to come back than my boy in Su Wong. This is a prospect that I'm willing to get up for. Tomorrow morning I'm getting up at the crack of dawn and I'm turning on In Su Wong highlights because it's gonna be a great day. And I'll tell you what, I see a lot of heart in this kid. That fight against Won Jun Choi, it was only 5 seconds, but it was a hell of a fight. And I'm excited to see him compete tomorrow. So let's go. I'm locked and loaded, baby.
I absolutely love it. Always a hot take from our guy. My man, why don't you take it away, my brother? What do you have on this fight, my man? Iwo, Muhammad Ali. Do you see anything you like?
Yeah, I didn't know Muhammad Ali has he's a good fighter. When I was expecting the BJJ accolades, I was expecting more of like the grappling and everything. But then this guy's like I saw on Narco Cop's broadcast, he called him RoboCop, and I think that's the perfect example. This guy is literally kill or be killed. And while there's only like maybe like 10 minutes of film and then like 2 minutes of Instagram highlight reels against Jared Gooden, but I can tell this guy loves to strike. Ever since he got out of the gi, he's been excited to just throw hands and knock people out. But I mean, I think he's a Terminator. I think this guy's got a lot of power. He's definitely laid off some of the supplements that he's been using back in his heyday. And this Iwu guy, he's kind of similar. The tape pro fights, it's not a lot of film, but we see he's like a Polish grappler. So this is actually kind of interesting. I think we might get to see Ali's grappling this time around, but I mean overall, it's hard to really get a good read on both these guys. But I think we all know that this Ali guy is someone that's been hyped up. He's got a good management behind him, and he's been training with Lloyd Irvin, if I'm correct. So obviously, this is a guy that has a lot of potential, and it's someone that they're willing to get the marketing machine behind. So I think this Ali guy is probably going to find a KO one here, and I'm excited to see what he turns out in the light heavyweight division because we don't have many prospects, and this guy seems mad entertaining. And Jared Gooden's a good regional win, whether you like him or not.
I absolutely love the breakdown, my man. And I feel like I have something that I haven't heard anybody else talk about. And I listen to a couple of these other shows and I always respect everybody. That's why I listen, right? Like I really appreciate what these guys do. And sometimes they have an eye for something I missed in the tape or they noticed something on the Instagram that I didn't see. Like Narco is insane with noticing like injuries and stuff. I'm like, this guy, I have to listen, right? Dialed in. But here's what I'll say, guys. This guy was training to be an MMA fighter when he was a blue belt with the Nogueira brothers. Okay. And he went and he's like, guys, I want to take a fight. And they're like, no, you're too young, brother. Stay with the jiu-jitsu for now. And then he just became the best in the world. So he was like, I mean, like, I'm just going to chill with this for a bit, right? But the reason why he knows how to kickbox isn't just because he fell in love with it after. I'll share with you guys now. This is where you can find it on BJJ Heroes. They have his whole like life story, guys. And if you look back, he's training with the Nogueira brothers. He's asking them at 17, can I go out there and make my pro debut? They're like, no, stick with this. And then he went on to win the no-gi and the gi worlds in different years. The guy's incredible, right? So obviously he's a very good jiu-jitsu player, but he knows how to do MMA, right? And he's been doing it for a very long time. And he's kind of had this on the back burner in terms of aspirations. Some guys are not fighters. Like, that's not what they're interested in. They're really good. Like, Jordan Burroughs is the best wrestler in the United States for years and years and years. And they're always like, do you want to do MMA? Do you want to do it? He's like, no, I'm the best wrestler in the world. I have no interest in doing that. Like, I appreciate the offer, but, like, I'm good. Like, I'm the best at this. I'm not going to do something else. Some of these guys, though, really want to fight. And, like, that's what he does, right? That's why he goes out there and swings. But I think the other thing is people are like, why is he not going out there to try and knock these guys out in the first exchange? Like he's trying to get a little time out there, right? So he's had 4 pro fights. So, he had amateur bouts scheduled a very long time ago, and then he kind of just like moved on to jiu-jitsu. But the guy was ready to go. And so I just feel like he wants to fight. He's not afraid to fight. He's a huge dude. He's got big muscles, scary guy. And the thing I want to talk about is his opponent is not a bad fighter. When you look at this guy, Iwo, I just think the problem is here. What's his best path in most fights? He goes out there, he takes guys down. He's got excellent judo. He's got very good jiu-jitsu, at the Polish regional level, and that's just not a bad thing, right? There's good grapplers in Poland. But you just look at this guy and like, that's the thing. I don't know if it's going to translate at an international level, at the world level. And it's like Muhammad Ali has shown he has world-class jiu-jitsu outside of MMA. He hasn't shown it in MMA. That's fair. But then you just look at like what I expect is on the feet. I think he's the superior guy. I think he's a little bit, bigger. I think he's going to be more devastating with his strikes. I think he will maybe be a touch faster with the boxing, but other than that, I just think he's probably going to be outgunned. And I think Ali, because he's fresh in MMA, could probably take a good punch, give one back. So for me, I just feel like he does have RoboCop vibes, but I would say like better jiu-jitsu even, for winning MMA fights, in the sense that like if he needs to go out there and hold somebody down for a while, I think he could do that. So I think that he's an impressive guy, and I think that Iwo can win fights. I think he'll be back, 26 years of age, but I think it's a little too much too soon for him, and I think Ali's going to get the win. Gordo, what do you think, my brother?
Yeah, I don't think Iwo is a bad fighter by any means. He's able to go out there, utilize his takedown, solid from top control as well. He's able to implement a lot of damage from top position there as well. Like, I don't think he's a bad fighter. On the feet, lacks a little bit of technicality, but he will throw decent speed when it comes down to it. So someone who I do think has some ability to go out there and fight and win and do pretty well at 26 years of age. But, you look at Muhammad Ali, and never would I say, wow, the best part about Muhammad Ali's fight game is his grappling, right? That just doesn't happen, right? But he's going out there and he is winning these championships. He is fantastic in the grappling, and he hasn't even needed to use it in the MMA scene so far. He's going out there, he's striking, he looks like a seasoned veteran. He's landing head kicks. He's going out there, he's landing spinning shots. He's setting up his reads. He's pulling people into traps. Like, all right, fair play. Low level of comp, that's fine. And I do still think Muhammad Ali's probably the slower striker. So, like, it's a complete role reversal, because usually Muhammad Ali's a very quick boxer, right? Muhammad Ali's still a little slower, but he's got power. He's able to break the guard that way as well. And he's someone who is looking to inflict damage. So, Liam, if you could pull up the face-off for me real quick, if that's okay. You look at these two fighters, and there's a clear size disparity. There's a clear difference in, the physical appearance of one of them, especially considering the steroidal past for someone like Muhammad Ali. But I do think it's one where you have a bigger fighter here who's going to land the more powerful and impactful shots on the feet, who we know has the better grappling game of it all, facing someone who has historically needed to land takedowns to have his most success in the octagon. It doesn't really rate out too well. So I'm on Ali. I think the line could be wide. If this is a 15-minute striking exchange, maybe you could get some hand speed advantages on the Polish fighter here. So maybe there's that ability. But more times than not, the fighter with more advantages, whether it be in the ground game, whether it be in the striking or the moment winning, or even just the physicality, the size of it all, is going to be Muhammad Ali. And I'm picking him to win. I think it's going to be a fun fight. I think Ali is the one of the bigger names on the card. Again, maybe it's name value, but I do think he has the skills to back it up. Someone who I do think will go out there and look to implement his size, implement his well-versed fighting arsenal. I just kind of hope I see that ground game. Like, I can go watch jiu-jitsu all I want. How does jiu-jitsu mix in when some dude's also trying to pound your face in? So I'm excited. Should be a great fight. Picking Ali. Definitely looking forward to it.
Me as well, my man. And I will just say, he kind of gives off, like, he looks like a movie star. Doesn't he look like he's like, when you look for an aura check, I'm like, this guy passes the aura check. And by the way, guys, I talked about it on Twitter. Obviously, I don't want to, switch off the face-off right now. I'll look into it in a little bit. But some of the bigger social media followings that you'll see, like on Contender this series, like this season, it's kind of crazy. Ali's got a huge following, and there's a few other guys as well. So we'll discuss more. But that brings us, of course, to the main event. What I will do before we move to the main event, guys, is I want to just give Pierce an opportunity. Do you have anything you'd like to share, my brother, on the fights we've already discussed? Obviously, we got Tommy Gantt in the building representing for wrestling, but we got New York on the other side. So I'm rooting for both guys in a way. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, shout out to the 919. You know, I'm going back to my roots with the Wolfpack's own Tommy Gantt. You know, I like that he left North Carolina to go to DC's new gym. So obviously, you know, that's a very bullish sign in the room with good people. And obviously, if there was a guy that could help translate high level wrestling into an MMA game, it would be Daniel Cormier. So overall, I mean, I did play Gantt at like on Sunday when it was like barely plus money. Looking at the price now, I think he's still someone that I would consider a bet at these odds just because of the whole pace dynamic. And I don't think Livingston is someone who's faced this caliber of wrestling. While I retaped it, I think Livingston's actually he's a lot better than what I remember seeing on my first time around on the tape. He's someone that's very patient. He's not going to rush a finish. He's got like the basic 1-2s, low kicks. So I think he's a good fighter. But I just think at the end of the day, it's like someone in Gantt with the high level wrestling. I think he can maybe push a pace, and you know, maybe he does remind me a little bit of Montel Jackson. So I see a little comparison there. So maybe he can put his paws on him and get him down to the mat. But yeah, that's definitely my most exciting fight. I'm looking forward to is this one right here.
Heck yeah, man. I feel like both those guys go out there with some bad intentions, you know, like in different positions, right? Gantt on the ground is looking to finish people, and Livingston on the feet is looking to take your head off. So should be an interesting pairing.
I don't know,
Are
bro.
you actually all in on Insu Wang? Are you a big Insu Wang guy?
I'm actually a big Devin Polson guy as well. I forgot to mention that, and Tommy Gantt showed high level striking in that fight as well. But no, Insu Wang, you know, he's my spirit animal. He's someone that I can get behind as a fan, but not financially. You know, this isn't the type of guy I want to invest my money in. He's wearing swim shirts in the octagon. You know, I'm not going to hate anybody that steps in the octagon, but you know, it's a weird selection to wear t-shirts in your 5th pro fight, but. I will say that 5-second KO, if nobody's seen it, I think that's top 10 greatest moments I've ever seen in an MMA octagon. The way he just smiled. I hope you can pull it up if we don't get copyrighted, but the way he just smiled and ran right into the right hand. I haven't seen anything like that. And, you know, we got Paddy McCorry. You know, Irish MMA is a bit weird. You know, we got Paul Hughes, but outside of that, we don't got much. So, and it's kind of crazy to say an Irish guy at minus 250's value. But, you know, I think Paddy McCorry is someone that is being brought in to win. You know, Will Curry was gifted a layup. You know, my man Will Curry was about to be in the UFC. I'm on the bandwagon of the point where I call them fraud warriors now. Cage Warriors has fallen off. So, you know, Fraud Warriors was about to get another guy in the UFC, but now they got in Paddy McCorry to save the day. And I think this is just as much of a layup as the Will Curry fight is. The only way my boy Insu Wang wins this fight is the right hand. And I think Paddy could go for takedowns here. I think that would be smart, but no, you know, that's an athlete right there. Look, that's a man that is not scared to get in the ring with anybody.
In all its glory, in all its glory. And that's everything, guys.
Down goes Wang! Down goes. We got Muhammad Ali and Insu Wang. Well, I'm gonna tell my grandkids about this card. This is gonna be legendary. But yeah, I did lay the chalk on Paddy McCorry. All jokes aside, I think anything around minus 200 is very good in this matchup here. And the first fight is that. Which one is the first fight again? I apologize.
Canada.
Oh, yeah. You know, I think Cody Chovancek I don't know how to say that, is going to start where Bradley De Silva left off, and he's going to go for takedowns and try to, you know, get a boring decision. But
Let's go.
I think my boy.
That's what I thought.
You know, I think everybody, this price is baked into Cody's last fight. You know, it wasn't the best look. I forget the guy's name, but the dude that was 12-5, it was someone that was kind of just piecing him up at range for a little bit. But Cody showed he's tough. He's not someone, if this fight's on the feet, that I'm gonna be like, okay, if he doesn't go for takedowns here, I think Uchegbu's got the strike and he's got the range to kind of pick him apart. But you know, I've noticed that Uchegbu's his takedown defense isn't the best. And Cody, while he kind of mixes it in pretty well. And this part surprised me too. I was not expecting them to size up almost pretty equally in terms of like the height. I don't know if that's one of them's wearing shoes or something, but you know, I thought Uchegbu was gonna have a huge size advantage on Cody, but you know, dog or pass for sure. I think this is a pick'em fight. I haven't placed a bet yet, but if Cody goes for the grappling, I think this is definitely an underdog that could look like the line should be flipped here.
Yeah, apparently, according to UFC stats, it's only a 1 inch advantage in height. It's the reach that's obviously, pretty significant, disadvantage on paper. But dude, I totally agree with you. I think that Cody's a very good like anti-rhythm fighter. I think his takedowns are well timed because they interrupt pressure, and I think that that could be a game changer for him. So I'm with you in the fact that I think it's a dog or pass situation. So I'll probably be
Yeah,
getting there. But guys,
can I say one more
the
thing as
the
well?
best is last, of course. Please.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have talked about. Do we even have props right now? I don't think we do, but
Not yet.
I
No,
didn't mind the
that's the
over.
unfortunate thing.
Yeah, I didn't mind the over in this Cody fight just because I think both guys have been long in 5 round fights, and I think it's like -130. Not bad at all. I think maybe Cody submission if we get a huge number, but it's like I still think this goes to decision at a pretty high clip. And the under in the McCorry fight, I think at plus money is pretty solid as well in a fight that I think is potentially a squash match.
We're lining up, brother. We're lining up.
I agree. So we're seeing a lot of the board the same. Let's see if we can find our way to the same visions on this last fight. Honestly, I think both these guys are good fighters. So I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. I believe I let off on the last one, so we'll kick it to Gordo, and then obviously Pierce will follow up.
Yeah, I do think this is a fantastic fight. I think it's warranted to be the main event, and I do think it's going to go out here and deliver. You have two guys who are very aggressive, powerful strikers, and let's address the elephant in the room. It's the 6'1" bantamweight here. He is a tall, lanky dude. He is going out there, utilizing every bit of that range. You could see how pointy his elbows are just by that picture. Oh my God, I never realized that, and it's really catching me off guard. I'm not going to lie. But he is a fighter who's going out there, and he is landing these big shots. He's got the power when he's going out there, very precise with the striking, but also a lot of kicks. Now, can those kicks sometimes be spinning and a bit detrimental? Of course. But when he's also landing, I do think he has the ability to be more of a sniper of the two. Because you look at someone like Sosa, and man, he's fun. I think he's someone who is going to translate pretty well to, entertainment value inside of the Apex tomorrow night, because he's going out there swinging heavy. He is an athlete. He's training with a pretty good camp. You see him posting videos with Tapori all the time there as well. And he is looking to go out there and take your head off. There's no two ways about it. He can sometimes overextend and leave his chin open while doing so. But if he lands, I do think he is someone who can hit very hard, who is going to be aggressive, and who's always looking to finish the fight. So it comes down to this super aggressive 5'9" Spaniard who's going to go out and take your head off versus someone like Maxim Lee who's 6'1", has plenty of range, and is going to be a bit more precise with it too. So I think there are plenty of variables in this matchup. What I do think we do have is a fit. That's not true. I don't think it goes extended, but I do think we have ourselves a striking affair. One where there's a lot of power shots being thrown, and one where would not be surprised if Hector Sosa is able to land that big shot. But I think more times than not, it's going to be Lee on the counter striking when Sosa does leave his head out there, when he does leave his chin exposed, for Lee to land the bigger shot and be able to find that counter and get the knockout this week in what a pretty close fight. The other thing you want to mention too is, I guess, another elephant in the room is, unfortunately, we did have Hector Sosa lose his father yesterday during the weight cut. That, along with, I believe I saw his sister passed away from cancer a few months ago there as well during the fight camp. So this guy definitely has a heavy heart. I mean, doing all this stuff away from home with the deaths in the family and everything like that as well. Like, he is someone who his family has supported him. They want to see him do well, and he is going to go out there and fight with his family on his mind, and for his dad and for his sister, and someone that is going to have a lot of motivation behind him. So, I'm kind of cheering for the guy, if I'm being honest, and I do think he definitely does have a chance. The guy's powerful. He will go forward. Sometimes there's not always fairy tale endings, and I do think that he does leave his chin out there very pretty exposed very often. So I do think we have a barn burner. I'm cheering for both these guys. I do think both these guys could have a future inside the UFC, but I think Hector Sosa, although he may go for the kill, may leave himself overextended too much, and I do think the counters for Maxim Lee will be there. The size should pay dividends, and in what I think is a close fight, I did pick the 6'1" bantamweight to get it done.
Yeah, I think they both have a very similar fighting style, and one is insanely massive. It's like a very interesting style matchup in that way. I would describe Hector Sosa as like a bargain bin, Ilya Taporia, without trying to disrespect the guy. It's like he's the pound for pound number one, right? So it's a very high bar to set, but he's like a very lesser version of that, but he's got a lot of the same instincts, a lot of the same ways that he fights. Pierce, what do you think about this one, my man? It's certainly going to be a fun fight, I think.
Yeah, this, Gordo said we have an elephant in the room. I think this is a giraffe in the room. This tall glass of water right here, and Max and Lee is He's an interesting fighter. You know, I still think the jury is out on him in terms of what type of fighter he is. I do agree that I think his striking is very dynamic, but then at the same time, I actually just taped this fight before I hopped on here. I'm still trying to figure out what like the process is for this guy because he's just throwing a bunch of spinning kicks. You know, he's kind of just throwing something at the wall and hoping it sticks. And someone in Hetcher Sosa, who I think he's a good fighter. I think skill for skill. I'm taking Hetcher all day, but you just have to look at just the other metrics. It's the size, the dynamicism, and someone in Hetcher, like I don't like the factor in the outside stuff, but this is definitely something we need to focus on. And rest in peace, his father. But it's something mentally that I think in this type of atmosphere, you know, Dana White Contender Series is already a pressure cooker to begin with, and then just all this, I don't know how that's going to affect how he's going to come in here and fight. But I mean, I think in the pocket, you know, I know Hetcher Sosa is very hittable himself, but I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like Maxon Lee is Muhammad Ali in terms of the boxing defense. This is somebody that has that tall man's defense. He's going to leave his chin out there. And I think Hetcher could maybe find him in the pocket. I do like he's got a good left hook. He's someone that's accurate with his punches. And, you know, I think this could potentially be where Maxon and him start throwing down very early and Hetcher could hurt him. But another angle I saw some people mention, which I didn't actually mind because you see this in a lot of Hetcher's fights, is he leaves his neck out there. And you look at someone in Maxon, I think it was a Darce, that one fight that he snatched up. He's got good chokes, and these guys with these long arms, you know, they can get a lot of leverage. And I could easily see him snatching up like almost like a guillotine or a front choke here. And Hetcher, I mean, we've seen him in a lot of fights. He does leave his neck out there. It's almost like he's too comfortable defending it that it's like someone in Maxon could catch him while they're dry. And I don't think a submission would be a bad look here. I'm not sure what the total is for this fight. I think it was a 1.5, which is a little tricky. But I think if the fight extends, it's probably Hetcher. And if it finishes, I mean, it seems like if Maxon's main win condition is probably going to be an early finish here. I feel like if it gets extended, I think Hetcher is a smart enough fighter where he can maybe make this a bit more tactical. But I don't know. This Maxon guy is very weird to me. I'm not looking to lay the chalk on this guy like I've seen a lot of other people do this week.
I totally get where you're coming from, my man. You know, I think that both these guys are really good fighters, right? And when you get to a matchup like this, you know, the things I agree with you that I'd probably just pass on this fight in terms of a side perspective, like when I'm looking at it now, because I feel like Hetcher Sosa would be the side, but for some of these emotional factors. You look at the guy, he's got a ton of experience, right? Like the guy fought a million times amateur and then a million times pro. Like I'm kidding, of course, but like he's fought a lot of times. So at 30 years of age, he's kind of like where he's going to be, you know, and he does have a lot of the same game, which can, you know, I could just say as a grappler, right? Like, you know, a guy who goes out there and trains, it's like when I have somebody that's going for the same moves I love, it's a lot harder for them to get me. But when they're going for moves that I'm, you know, maybe neglectful of or I haven't spent as much time with, that's when you can catch somebody, right? It's like the ones that they don't really understand the next step and the next step, how to get out of something. And so it can be hard to front headlock guy, but it is the kind of thing where you look at long man chokes, guys that are super long like that can create real opportunities for themselves. And also, you know, if they hurt you on the feet, you know, they can just get to that choke series very quickly. And we've seen a lot of guys have success with that. So I do think Maxon Lee has a very good choke series. I think Paddy McCrory has a worse version of a similar game where you just see the long man arms going to those submission attempts. Like it can be very, you know, successful. But on the other side, Hetcher Sosa, you know, when you have short arms and you can get somebody into that hold, right? It might be harder to get there, but once you get there, you can sometimes get a very, very tight squeeze effect. If you have a little bit bigger muscles as opposed to the thinner arms, you can kind of create that squeezing pressure where now you have two flexing muscles kind of going into the sides of their throat, can create a lot of pressure, forcing the shoulder into the neck as well. So both these guys have a really good front headlock series, right? I think if either one of them gets hurt, you know, the ends by sub is something, obviously I don't want to mush these lines before they even exist, right? Like, I don't know what it's going to be, but a lot of people are talking about ends by KO, it's like these two guys, I think, could hit each other really hard and they're both tough. And I just think like, if you have one of these guys hurt, the way you get him out of there is like, he's disoriented quick. And it's like, lock him up because he can't tough guy a choke, right? You just go to sleep like anybody else. So I feel like when you look at this matchup in particular, I think both guys are really skilled and talented. the difference, I would say, for Hector Sosa that could be Hetcher, excuse me, that could be his advantage. It's like the guy's got so much experience to fall back on. But then to his detriment, it's like the other guy's absolutely massive, right? So it's like there's just no easy call, I feel, here. And to lay a -170 with a guy that does have some question marks for me, one thing I'll note, look at Gene Silva, who I think is a very good fighter, right? He's going out there throwing spinning kicks, gives up his back, gets taken down. How'd that turn out? It's almost a 10-8 round in the other direction from one really bad mistake. Give a spin you don't need to and give your back. If you have a really well-timed spin, if you really calculate it, okay. But it's like just a lot of spins are unnecessary. And I do think that that's one thing. Like if Max and Lee wasn't spinning as much, I'm like, cool, perfect. But it's like this guy's willing to take these risks where it's like, if you show your back to somebody who's a really aware fighter with eyes open and they've been in a lot of fights, they're like, oh, he's about to spin. And then they take your back and it's just like, well, that was a bad decision, right? Like I went from neutral in front of the guy to I gave my back, horrible position for me. So unless you have a really good timing, speed, perfect, everything's perfect, those kicks are really dangerous for me. And I like his calf kicks. I think Sosa has good calf kicks. Like they are like mirror images of each other in some ways. But again, the size, I think, is a factor. So I'd probably make it -125 Max and Lee. And so for that reason, it's not really like massive value, I think, on either. But I would probably lean towards Hetcher Sosa, if not for the familial stuff. I do like guys with a lot of experience on this show. And I feel like, again, Max and Lee, 26 years of age, like that other guy we were talking about, the Polish gentleman. He's got real skills. I believe in what he could do. I think he's a really dangerous guy. As soon as he gets to the UFC, he's a problem. But could it be too much for him on Tuesday? Could it be, hey, I make one mistake and I'm made to pay for it for the first time in my career type of thing? I think that's very possible. So I would be a little bit careful here. I hear the noise as well, Pierce. And it did make me want to bet Sosa, but I will say the narrative stuff, I pay attention to that every time. And I'm like, ugh, I'm not loving the narratives here. Although I will say Damon Jackson had personal tragedy and came out there and kicked Pat Sabatini's head into the third row.
I was actually reacting. I think I might have discovered breaking news for next week's episode. The great Robbie Ring is back. Robbie Ring is returning on short notice to fight Javier Reyes. I can't believe this day has come, but sorry, that was something I felt the need to share with everybody, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But what I was going to say here is Sosa, somebody they've been trying to bring into the UFC for the past like year and a half now. I know there's been rumors about him fighting on one of these European cards. They've been talking about going to Spain. So, while I think they wouldn't mind having a guy like Max and Lee in here, I think if I'm the UFC brash, Sosa is definitely someone, if we're looking for a Spanish card with Topuria headline, and he's definitely someone that they would look to bring in on this roster because it seems like he's a very popular guy in Spain. So just throwing that out there. I know you love those type of narratives, Mr. Liam.
I will bring this up so everybody can see it. You guys can obviously follow me over at LiamPicksFights if you're interested. I share this kind of information just to, give you guys an idea of what I look at. And one thing that I look at, Muhammad Ali, 182,000, like very uncommon for Contender Series guys. You can look through a lot of UFC cards, and there's like 4 people that have that many Instagram followers. I'll just level with you. Patty McCorry, same kind of deal, 139,000, nothing to sneeze at. You look at Hetcher Sosa, he's 4th on the list, right? Hwang also has a big following, credit to him. But look at last week, right? Carol Foro was the most popular woman on the show last week, most popular fighter on the show, 17.6 thousand. Not even like sniffing the same ballpark. So this is a big week in terms of stars. This is a big week in terms of talent. I'm excited about this one, fellas. And, me and Pierce lining up on an underdog, I'm like, I might have to go make a move. I might have to drive to New Jersey for this one. You know what I'm saying? Like I might have to make a play. But if I ever feel like a Canadian's going to win a fight because they have aura and because they're going to go out there and push the takedowns, this is a young GSP. That's what I'm seeing. I'm kidding, of course, but I do love it, my man. I think that that's one that I'm probably going to have to get to before all is said and done. But with that being said, normally, Piers, me and Gordo do a quick card recap. It is totally your prerogative. Whatever you feel like doing, my brother. It's up to you, my man. So the floor is yours. If you want to do a recap, you can. If you want to just say, thanks for the memories and peace out, whatever you want to do, my man. I know you're a busy fellow. We appreciate you stopping by.
No, of course. I mean, I love doing the quick little recaps because, we all get so much information thrown at us. And I would love to say in so long. One more time. All right. If you want me to get started from the bottom, I can just go ahead and do that. So we have, sorry, I have Robbie Ring pulled up on my screen. Oh yeah, first fight, Cody versus Rafael Uchegbu. I think it's dog or pass here. I definitely think this is a competitive fight. Someone in Uchegbu who we've seen in his one pro loss, he did struggle with the grappling from the homeboy in the PFL, Mr. Ruiz. And it's definitely something that I've kept my eye on. I think he's gotten a lot better in terms of his game. He seems to be more well-rounded, but these guys he's fighting in, I think it's FFS or full contact contender, something like that. He's fighting a lot of older guys, so it's hard for me to get a good read on like what his level of competition is right now. Whereas like Cody, I mean, we could kind of argue it's the same thing. He's going to a close decision that he arguably lost his last fight, but I think this is one of those styles make fights. If Cody's not going for takedowns here, I think Rafael is going to pick him apart at range. So I could see Cody making this. He can make this a meal out of this if he decides to stay on the feet. So I think Cody should go for takedowns here. And if you were to tell me this guy's going to wrestle, I would probably put a decent sized bet on him. So I mean, I haven't placed a bet yet. I'm kind of going to wait and see where this line goes, but. I mean, at these odds, I think Cody's good. Maybe his decision line in the over. I think the over could be very short considering both these guys have been in the championship rounds and 5-round fights in their past couple ones. So yeah, I'll go Cody by decision. Or if you want to get tricky, if we get a nice number on the sub, I think that's solid. And then my boy Patty McCorry versus In Su Wong. In Su Wong is he's got 50,000 Instagram followers, and I don't know if that means he's good. Probably doesn't, but unless he turns into like this other guy from last year where he just comes in out of nowhere and just looks like a stud. I think Patty McCrory is definitely somebody that's gonna probably find a first round finish here. I think it's one of those where we see in Su Wong, he reaches with his punches, he runs away a lot from when people strike back at him. So it's definitely someone where I feel like if Patty wants to stand his ground, it could get a little bit risky in terms of like Patty McCrory is not necessarily someone that has good striking defense himself. But when I see the Korean kid and he's grabbing at punches and he's running away, it's definitely something you don't want to see in Dana White Contender Series. So yeah, I think Patty's being brought in the win here. My gut says KO, but it's one of those like I could see a front choke as well. But I think Patty can honestly knock this guy out pretty quickly here. So I'll go round 1 KO for my man Patty McCrory. And Tommy Gantt versus Adam Livingston, that's definitely a tough fight to call. I think whoever wins this fight is going to look big favorite here. We have Tommy Gantt representing the 919. So, I got to back my boy, Tommy. I think he's going to get the wrestling going. And I think as the fight extends, it's definitely something his cardio is a weapon here. And I think him training with Daniel Cormier in California is definitely a good sign in terms of expanding his game and becoming more of a mixed martial artist. So it's now or never for a guy like Tommy. I hope he can get in. I do understand that, like, I could see just a boring decision where Dana White's like, all right, we don't sign 32-year-olds, buddy. But this is a story for another day if that's the case. But I think Tommy can pace him down the stretch and maybe find a KO. He does have good ground and pound. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Livingston can sprawl and brawl. All I'll say is if you have live bets and you see Livingston stuffing takedowns early, it's definitely would look to hop on that. So I think you'll know after 2 minutes what's going to happen in that fight, who establishes their game. But I'll go Tommy Gantt. I'm going to go maybe decision most likely. And then I think I've already gave my opinion on the Ali versus Iwo fight. I think this is definitely one of those where it's like it's tough to get a read on both these guys just because there's limited film. But I mean, I think all the measurables and all the narratives point towards this Muhammad Ali guy being brought in to win. I like the fact that he has the jiu-jitsu accolades, but he also is not afraid to stand on the feet. I wish we could have got access to the Jared Gooden fight. That would have been nice to see him go 15 minutes. But based on the highlights, it seems like he was not afraid to stand his ground. He dropped Gooden a couple of times. And I think if he can, just get his striking going here. I know this Iwo guy is definitely going to look for takedowns, which could make it interesting because we know these BJJ guys, they sometimes like to play off their back. I'm not too familiar with what type of grappler he was when he competed internationally, but it's probably Ali KO. I know that sounds pretty square, but it's a tough fight to get a read on. I'm probably not going to have a bet myself. I'll just sit back and enjoy this fight. And the main event, Hetcher Sozer versus Maxon Lee. This is definitely a very interesting fight where I see a lot of people on the Maxon Lee side, and I get it. He has a lot of the upside in this matchup. He's the young kid. He has this height and reach that you really do not see at the bantamweight division. But what we do with these 6'1" guys. You got to chop down the tree. So Souza could maybe, he is a smart fighter. I think skill for skill, I think Souza's better, but you know, the athleticism of Max and Lee could definitely cause him problems, especially early with the size and the front chokes. He likes to chase. So I could see Hedger Souza maybe struggling early, and if he is looks to grapple, which I think he will, because it's like when you look at the size difference here, it's probably going to lean towards someone like Hedger looking for takedowns. So I do worry he might get submitted round 1. So definitely keep an eye on the Max and Lee submission props. I think that could be sneaky, but I don't know. My gut's telling me I think this Max and Lee guy is I don't want to say fraud check because I think he could be a decent fighter, but I think he's somebody that I'm a bit skeptical about. And I could see someone like Hedger Souza giving him a vet lesson here in the main event for tomorrow night. So I'll go Hedger Souza. I'll go I honestly could see a decision most likely for Souza if he were to win, but if Maxon wins, I could see an early sub as well. So it's definitely one of those fights. I would say Lee early sub the decision. I'll go with the underdog here, and hopefully he can get a win for his pops. You know, that would be awesome to see him get a win in this situation. But yeah, I'm blessed that you guys were able to send me the bat signal. Glad to share my analysis as always, and it's a nice little throwback. You know, I will say Dana White Contender Series always has a soft spot in my heart, and I'm glad to talk to you guys about it on this Tuesday night. So let's go, guys. I'm excited to hear what you guys have for these fights as well.
Appreciate you, my brother. Always welcome, and thank you for coming by. Gordo, take it away, my man. The floor is yours. I'll bring you back to the front, and then I'll cut myself.
All right, sounds good, man. No, you know what, man? I'm going out here watching a Canadian start the card off. You know I'm cheering for my boy Cody. You go out there, shout out Petrolia, Ontario. We're cheering for the Canadian. We're going out there, and I do think he has all the skills to be a UFC level guy, and I do think it's a fight that should be close. But I'm not going to come out here and I try to tape these fights pretty unbiased. I try to make sure I'm honest with it. And if I had to pick a winner, gun into my head, I did actually go with the guy from the UK. I know. I'm sorry, Cody. I'm cheering for Canada. I think he has all the tools to get it done. But I do think when it comes down to it, he's someone who I do think always, let's say he lacks urgency sometimes. He can be caught at range. And I do think although he can go for takedowns, he doesn't always have the best control with that as well. So I'm cheering for Cody. I hope he wins. But this is a fight that I do expect to be a 15-minute war, one where I did go out there and mention the over as the fight card started. And in doing so, the moment winner from range is typically going to be Rafael here. So I'm cheering for Cody. I think he's going to get it done. I think especially if he starts off sooner with the cardio, he definitely has the tools to win. I'm just going to be honest with you guys, and I think it's a spot that's probably a really, really close fight. I'm cheering for Canada. I hope he gets it done. Lean toward the over. I'll be honest. Come on. When do I ever say that? But all right. Next one. We do have ourselves another legendary fight, as you mentioned. I can't say the In-Sung Hwang as well. Good. But I do think we have a pretty fun matchup. Patty McCorry coming here on short notice. Big Instagram following. Cool. What this is going to be is an absolute brawl. And between these two fighters, you have two guys who are going to go out there and want to look to strike. Two guys who have pretty poor defensive ground games at that as well, and two guys who are pretty green when it comes to the scene. And although Hwang has the ability to go out there and land a solid right hand and some solid leg kicks, he leaves a chin up in the air. He on the center line, he eats the shots too often. And I do think in a matchup here, he's a better hammer than he is a nail. So if he wants to go out there and land that big knockout shot, sure, go for it. I think that's his path to victory. Aside from that, Patty McCorry is the more game fighter. If there's these two fighters going out there getting into a bar fight, more times than not, it's going to be McCorry who's going out there wanting to get into that fight, right? McCorry's a fighter. He's going to go out there, try to roll a blunt and smoke it on him after there as well. So fun celebration, fun aura, lots of followers on there as well. And I do think he is someone who's going to go out there and just look to bring a war to Hwang. So Hwang's has opportunities. I do think Patty McCorry is probably the better striker of the two, being the more aggressive. And I've seen Hwang be a better hammer than he is a nail. So give McCorry to win and give me the under in what I do expect to be a fight that does end pretty early. Takedowns could be there for McCorry. I just think he wants to go there and brawl, if I'm being completely honest. I think they're going to go out there and swang and Hwang, if you ask me. And I do think it's going to be pretty good in that way there as well. Next fight up, we do have ourselves, a really fun one here in Tommy Gantt and Livingston. I do think this is probably, actually, no, the first one's the closest one. I couldn't really pick one. I did lean towards someone like Tommy Gantt. And in a fight like this, that is going to be a striker versus wrestler matchup, I do think Gantt is someone who's going to go out there, push a pace, and get his takedowns. I'm a DraftKings player for UFC slates. I love my cardio-based wrestlers. They score fantastic, and that's maybe why I'm picking him here. But with the wrestling pedigree he has, the ability to close distance, I do think he is someone who's going to be quick with it, someone who has a purpose in there, and who has shown cardio to do that for an extended period of time. So if Gantt's going to be able to do that, that's his path. That's going to score better. And I do think that's a spot that could help him win this fight. What I will say, though, is he is going to be entering the pocket. He's relatively untested. I've seen him dropped. Sure, he bounced back up a weight class. Who cares? He goes out there, and I do think Adam Livingston is a athlete who will throw from unorthodox angles and who does have decent power. So if Gantt's going to close the clinch, if you give me a solid enough number on Livingston KO, I think that might be his path to victory. And I alluded to that earlier. I'm still looking for that number. I think it's either Gantt late, Livingston early, and with that, potentially look at unders, but definitely look at that Livingston KO. I did pick Gantt based off of wrestling success, though. Then we got Muhammad Ali, guys. Come on, Muhammad Ali on a Tuesday night. What can go wrong? This guy is a fantastic grappler, and I do think that, we haven't had a chance to see it. I do think that he does have that in his back pocket. Maybe we'll see it here against someone Iwo who does want to go out there and get those takedowns. A Joko who wants to go out there and typically have that ground and pound success. If that's the case, you're playing into Ali's best game, but even at that, on the feet, he's looked comfortable. He's setting up spot. He's setting up traps. He's landing big head kicks. He's got moments. So to me, there's a lot of variables at play here, whether or not we get wrestling exchanges, whether or not we just get a 15-minute striking affair. And in doing so, I even think Iwo may have more volume on the feet, maybe even some better speed. Moments led with Ali, and he is a huge, powerful, admitted steroid user who's going to go out there and look to kick your head off, and if he can't do that, rip your head off on the mat, to which he's very good at. So I do think this is a spot that Ali should win. I do think that he was definitely going to be back in the UFC, but a tough matchup here. I did pick Ali as a pretty big favorite. Another fight I'm going to lean towards the unders, but I don't know if I'd touch props on this one, considering if this is an extended striking affair, I wouldn't be too surprised at that. And then the main event is an absolute barn burner. One that I'm excited to have be the main event. Two clash of styles here. A lot of, actually, Pierce, that was fantastic. Giraffe in the room here in Max and Lee with the size, with the frame he does have. He's going to go ahead and look to counter strike. He does throw really heavy there as well, like his team in the middle, like his weapons he does have. And I do think he's going to have the chance to counter someone, Hedger Souza, who goes in there, overextends his chin out there, because Souza himself wants to take your head off. He is super powerful at that. Is kind of a ball of energy and wants to kill you out there. And in doing so, although that allows him the opportunities to knock out Lee, also leaves him the chance to be countered here as well. So in what is going to be a car crash of a fight, you have the narrative of the 6'1" striker with plenty of range, and he's probably a better counter striker of the two, versus this 30-year-old fighter going out there fighting with his heart on his sleeve. Dad passes away yesterday. Sister passed away there as well, fighting for his family's legacy to make his dad proud. I think it's going to be a great fight. And Cinderellas don't always happen, so you don't really want to back on that. And I do think more times than not, Lee probably lands the counter shot and probably gets the knockout shot here. I'm cheering for a good fight. I'm kind of cheering for Sosa to get it done, if I'm being completely honest. But I don't mind your shout on the subline. More times than not, I think the fight ends by KO. But if that's the case, then unders might not be a bad luck here. I picked Max and Lee, but this should be an incredible main event. And I do think both these guys have the skills to be in the UFC at some time. So I hope the loser gets a short notice call.
I absolutely love it. The reason you come to this show, guys, is stats like this. Cade Garrison in the chat. Dana White Contender Series Giraffes are 2-0. The Battle Giraffe, Cam Rouston, cashed for us as an underdog earlier this year. I think it was Ty Miller he's talking about. Ty Miller, big dude. And, he got the win as well. So impressive guys. And we were, all over them in terms of the reads this year. So let's see how fast I could go in terms of these reads, guys. Cody is going to go out there in WrestleMania, this dude. People have forgotten, this guy, Cody, he's about to put on for Canada the highest aura Canada's seen in the last 5 years, since the Canadian Alpha, Eamon Zahabi, since the Canadian Alpha, Chad and Hellinger. Not have we been so passionate about a Canadian on this show. He's going to go out there and take this guy down, in my humble opinion. And that's the way I see it going. I like his opportunistic takedowns. I like his counter threat. I think he can land some big hands on the feet as well to get some respect. So I like Cody's game. I like the way he performs. I like the way he competes. And I think he's coming off a shitty performance, so people are holding it against him. But you watch back one fight prior and 5 rounds of hell he gave this guy, never slowed down in that fight, kept pushing the pace. And when the guy tried to get aggressive on him, he would throw back just enough to get the guy to believe, all right, we're striking. He's finally going to give it to me. And then he'd take him down again and say, rub your face in the dirt. Look at what I did to you again. And I think he's going to try and do that to this guy. And I think, we kind of saw it, on the PFL. That's a way to beat this guy. So I think Cody's going to push the right game plan. Next up, man, we got Paddy McCorry. Biased as shit, guys. We got an Irishman competing for, an opportunity. And I'm never going to put these men down, you understand? And when you look at Hwang, I don't think he's a bad fighter. I just think that he's a guy that has gotten away with some things that I think it's going to be harder to get away with at this level. The lack of head movement, the lack of fundamental defense. The guy takes a lot of risks on the feet, does a lot of this pullback defense, which, again, against a big guy like this, I'm not sure that that's going to work. And then when you look at his, takedown defense, leaves a lot to be desired. When you look at his groundwork, leaves a lot to be desired. I think you can make some similar criticisms about McCorry, but he's fighting real guys that have competed at the UFC level and competed at a high level in the regionals. And I think for Insu Wang, against some regional level guys, against some guys that, for me, I'm not rating guys at very high level at all, he's not looking good. So for me, he left a little bit to be desired. If he comes out here and proves me wrong, take my hat off to the guy. But for me, it's Paddy McCorry. I think he wins the fight. And I think that we've all aligned on the under. Yep. I think that that's the way to look at it. By the way, that covers Hwang. If he does go out there, connect with a big shot, he's got power, right? There's a reason he has some wins as a professional. He's not a slouch, but you just look at McCorry. I think he's got a better process. I think he's a better fighter with more, relevant experience, let's call it. And then you just look at the fact he's fighting in the Apex again. Right? Or maybe it was the Tough House, whatever. He's fighting in a UFC branded warehouse where I think he's going to be very comfortable, and I think he's ready for this opportunity. Next up, guys, we got Tommy Gantt and Adam Livingston. I think that Adam Livingston is destined to be in the UFC. I will put it that way. I think that the guy has the right skills, in terms of a foundational fighter. He's 24 years of age. He's fought 6 times as a pro, and he shows a good sprawl, and he shows good intensity. But overall, I do think that he still has a little bit of signs of being a bit green, in terms of the takedown defense, in terms of some of the decisions that he makes, getting back up to his feet. And I think that Gantt could punish some of those things. So for me, my pick is towards Gantt in this fight, but he fast-tracked an MMA career. He's had like 15 fights in a year and a half. The guy's been doing the damn thing. That could take a toll on your body. The guy's also coaching on the side. He's got a lot on his plate. So I really respect Tommy Gantt. I think he's an incredible guy. But this would be, a big step for him, right? So I think he can do it. I think he's probably a deserved favorite here, but I do just have a little bit of, temperance on my enthusiasm because I haven't seen him take too many clean punches. When I have, I'm a little bit worried. But when I just look at, unless he gets put out with some, what would you think? Like Jailton Almeida, Curtis Blades, like little short shots to the side of the head type deal. I think he's going to have opportunities to get to this guy's hips and to bring him to the ground. People have noted Gantt doesn't always prioritize holding the top position. He prioritizes hitting guys and taking them down again. And I do think that he is another guy that kind of has that cardio where he can push for these takedowns, but he's also willing to go out there and throw a lot of offense. So for me, I lean towards Gantt. I think he can get it done via KO or decision. I think there's an outside chance at a sub. I just don't think Livingston's going to give it to him. I think you would have to put him to sleep or something like that. But meanwhile, I think that on the other side, Livingston's live to win this fight by knockout. I just struggled to see him winning, unless he's able to D up all the takedowns, right? If there's no takedowns for Gantt and he just gets beat up for 15 minutes, so be it. But I just don't really see Gantt lasting 15 minutes if he's not getting takedowns. So that's kind of just the way that I see this fight going down. Next up, guys, we got Muhammad Ali and Iwo. I think that Muhammad Ali is just going to be the better guy on the night, right? I think that Iwo will be back. Another guy where, again, call him back next year. Let's see if he goes out there against a guy that he's the A side and he's got these opportunities. Iwo's here a little bit early, I feel, and I think that Ali's here at the right time. I think he's got secret experience, just a guy that's been working in the shadows for a while. And so the lack of pro experience makes me a little bit hesitant at these big prices. It's a light heavyweight fight, right? One punch can change everything. But I just think Ali, better athlete, a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more competent in the grappling arts, if it goes there. So for me, he's the pick. Next up, guys, we got Hacher Sosa and Maxon Lee. I think this is a fascinating fight. I lean towards this fight going under. I lean towards this fight not going the distance more often than not. I do think that they're both tough, but I just feel like if they're both chipping away at each other's calves, if they're both going out there and swinging the hardest punches that they can from their hip, if they're both turning spinning back kicks and trying to knock that other guy out, like somebody could just get splattered in this one, I feel. And additionally, both guys are super aggressive with their grappling, right? When you're really aggressive with your grappling, sometimes you take risks, put yourself in bad positions, put yourself in bad situations, spend too much of your energy, find yourself wanting, the guy reverses you, then submits you. So I just feel like both these guys, hyper aggressive, both super confident. And that's the kind of thing I think that could lead to an under, right? Like neither of these guys know their weakness. They're going to go out there and try offense aggressively from the beginning. And I feel like that kind of fight, maybe they go out there and put on a 15-minute war, but I feel like something's got to give, and I feel like both these guys have some violent intention. So I'm excited about this fight. Those are the ways I'd probably look to play it instead of leaning towards the side. Because again, I mentioned in my earlier breakdown, I think Sosa, barring everything else, barring the context, maybe would be my pick. it's just hard to cap those kind of intangibles. And you look at the Max and Lee side, he does have some upside. Right? He's a big guy. He's a scary guy. He's got some confidence. He's got skills in all positions. But for me, it's a prove-it spot for him against Sosa, who's been fighting forever, has a ton of experience to fall back on, and does have a lot of real skills in all positions. It's just that he's undersized here against a guy who's ridiculously big for the division. So I'm fired up. I think this is probably the best week of Contender Series so far. And I think that, knock on wood, the fights deliver, right? They can put them together. The matchups are here, and everybody made weight. Everybody did their job like a professional. Now let's see what they can produce on a Tuesday. I've been feeling like the Tuesday fights are better than the Saturday fights in terms of just the pure entertainment value, right? Not as high level, but just in terms of people going out there fighting hard, taking risks, looking for finishes. It is fun. Dana understands that part of the business, and I think it incentivizes guys to go out there and fight a certain way. And I'm expecting guys to go for takedowns here, but not to take people down and hold them down, to take them down and punch them very hard in the face. And that's the kind of fight where I like to see, right? I'm a wrestler, but I like to see guys go out there and fight. And I think that these guys that go out there and wrestle, including Tommy Gantt, are not just looking for takedowns. I think they're looking to hurt people. So I think it should be a fun night at the office. And that's all that we have for you guys. So I want to say thank you so much to our guests. I want to say, Pierce, again, brother, welcome anytime. The absolute GOAT, Big Bird. You guys can find him. We'll get his social medias linked up. But ultimately, guys, just really appreciate an OG stopping by. And, of course, the co-host each and every week on the show, Gordo Gambles, 4 years running. We've been doing the damn thing, consistency. And Lord willing, we can get some of the right picks this week. Lined up on some things, so maybe some totals this week. We'll have to see what, again, we can get in the very limited New York market, or your boy's going to have to, suit up, get in the whip and make some commitments to go out there and play some bets. But that's the state of the world that we live in. I'm excited about it. Appreciate all you guys. Thank you to the sharpest chat in the game. God bless. Good luck. Enjoy the fights. Come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Take care, everybody.